Good evening and welcome to the Development Control Committee meeting for the 15th of September 2021.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. Thank you to all those attending the Development Control meeting this evening and to those who are watching this meeting live via our YouTube channel. To those who are present with us this evening, I would just like to run through some brief housekeeping rules with you. Please could we ask you to use the hand sanitizer when entering and exiting the room, and you will find sanitizers located within the room should you require to use these during the meeting. We ask that face coverings are worn when moving around the room and are only removed when you are seated or standing to talk on an item. We are operating a one-way system in the room this evening, and you will see signs on the doors to assist you. We are not expecting any test fire drills this evening. If you should hear a fire alarm, please make your way out of the room and down the stairs, where officers will assist you to the evacuation location. This can be found across the road outside of the Star Hotel. Anybody requiring help in the event of an evacuation, please make yourself known and the relevant assistance will be provided. Please could I ask that all mobile phones are either switched off or put onto silent mode. The order of presentations for each application this evening will be as follows. Planning Officer presentation with technical questions from members. Agents, applicant and supporters with any technical questions from members. Objectors and interested parties with any technical questions from members. Parish Council representatives and ward councillors, followed by any technical questions from members, followed by committee debate and decision. Those designated speakers, when called forward, please make your way through to the dais, where the chairman will inform you of the length of time you have to speak. Members, I will remind you that should you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for myself or the chairman to acknowledge you, and your name will be added to those wishing to speak. When called to speak, you will be required to press the button on your microphone in front of you, and we ask that you speak both loudly and clearly. When voting this evening, members, this will be undertaken by a show of hands. Thank you, Chairman. We can now move on to the agenda items.
Thank you, Sammy. We move to item number 1. Any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies this evening from Councillor Fairhead, and we have a substitute of Councillor Borg. And we have apologies from Councillor Hanton and a substitute of Councillor Camden this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Freeman.
If I can just declare interest on the first item, 29, the Esplanade. I'm ward councillor for that area.
Okay, thank you. Any others? No? Okay. Item number 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of August 2021, which can be found on pages 6 to 20 of the agenda. Everybody happy with those minutes? Yep. Okay, thank you. So we move to item number 4, which is Sea Haven, the Esplanade, Scrapby, Great Yarmouth, and that is Robert Tate to present. Robert, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So before I get going with the presentation, there have been a few updates since the report was published. So the expiry date is now the 22nd of September, and we've had the response from the Parish Council and an extra neighbour objection has been received, but these will be read out during the presentation. Nice. So the application is for a replacement dwelling at 29 the Esplanade. The site is located to the east of the Esplanade, or the west of the Esplanade, I should say, which is a private track which runs parallel to the coast. The site is within the development limits for Scrapby, which we can see on this map here. This site is occupied by a post-war bungalow, which is similar in form and scale to the neighbouring ones. The existing bungalow is in a relatively poor state of disrepair, which we'll come to see later on. The replacement bungalow will be, or the replacement dwelling will be a chalet bungalow with accommodation over both floors. So on this slide here, you can see the existing bungalow and the floor plan to the bottom right, and then here is the replacement one as well. So you can see the accommodation over both floors as well. And on this slide, we can see the site layout. So you can see that the front elevation, so east is down on this map. So you can see that the front elevation is in line with the existing one. It does extend slightly further out to the rear, and as you can see, the current bungalow has a flat roof section as well. So there is a slightly increased impact from that point of view. The site is within the, it runs across both the 2025 and up to 2055 indicative coastal erosion zones, as identified on this map. Now, unfortunately, it's not transparent, but where the dot is roughly the front elevation. So even though the front of the site is within the up to 2025 zone, the majority of the site does lie within the 2055 zone. If we move on to some photos, so here's the current bungalow here. And then you can see for context the similar line of bungalows which runs. This is looking down to the south. And another one as well. This is looking to the north, so there's number 31 immediately north, and then number 33 is the chalet bungalow with the ridge running along the north-south axis. This is from the back, so you can see just about the bungalow from the road which runs to the rear, and then some other photos from the back looking through. You can see how it's kind of shielded at the moment, and you can't really see the sea from through the site. And that is the chalet bungalow from the rear, and then just the pattern of development along the road to the rear as well. This is the side elevation. Thank you, Sammy. And you can see there are some trees in the rear garden. They're not of particularly high quality. And then as we move forward, we can see more of the rear garden and just the context of the site as well. This is looking from the rear westwards, and then this is the flat roof section, the garage, and then this, you'll come to see in the report, is the veranda that the neighbour to the south references, and then this is just the view from the other side. So you'll be able to see the bungalow, which is proposed to be demolished, is on the right-hand side here. So there will be some impact with a slightly higher pitched roof and extended out to the back, but given the kind of boundary treatment and the existing context, it's not considered to be a significant adverse impact there. The existing bungalows on the left-hand side there, and then just the context of the number 31 to the north as well. Then some more photos showing the street scene. This is looking east, just to give you an understanding of how close it is to the sea. So I think in the report itself, it does reference how far away it is from the sea. And then this is from the cliff edge back to the beach, so you can just have a better understanding there as well. So if we move back to the report and the consultation responses, we've now had 9 letters of objection that have been received. So they cover the following points. So it's overshadowing to number 31, reduce view to number 27, no detail measurements on the plans, increase in scale over existing bungalow, loss of outlook / light from the veranda of number 27, will block sea views to the property behind, endangerment of the cliff top, application form states no trees and hedges on the site when this is not the case. Will devalue neighbouring properties, and then this out of character and should be a bungalow. The email that we've had this morning doesn't add anything further from what has been raised, but I will just read it out for clarity. So it says, to erect a 2-storey building is not in keeping with the other properties on the seafront. Refurbishment is understandable. These chalets must be 80 years old and are part of Scrapby history. If we move on to the parish council response, they have commented to say, further to our council meeting last night, which was held on the 13th, the council would like to comment that the property is located within the government shoreline management plan, which states that there should be no new development in this area, and that we would ask that this is considered when deciding the application. So as I mentioned earlier, the Esplanade itself is a private track. So the local highways authority hasn't commented on the application, but they have just given a note to say that they cannot foresee any reason to object, given that it is a replacement dwelling. The site is located within the orange 400 metres to 2.5k indicative habitat zone, although because it's for a replacement dwelling, a HRA or HMMS contribution isn't required. And then if we move through the policies, they're all the relevant policies from the Borough-wide Local Plan, Core Strategy, NPPF, and Emerging Local Plan Part 2 are paragraphs 3 in your report. If we move on to the principle of development, as I said earlier, the site is within the development limits of Scrapby, but notwithstanding this is a replacement dwelling, and as we look through the photos, The current bungalow does form part of a continuous line of dwellings, although it is the penultimate dwelling in that line, with number 33 being a chalet bungalow, albeit with this pitch on a north-south axis. As such, a chalet bungalow is not considered to be incongruous in this location, and the taller dwelling is considered acceptable. And as I just mentioned, in highways terms, the appropriate parking can be secured, even though the local highway authority didn't have any comments. A number of neighbour objectives related to the impact of the proposal would have a neighbouring amenity, either through loss of outlook, overshadowing, or loss of light, all of which have been pointed out during the slides, and it's not considered that the increase in height or scale would result in any significant further impact on neighbouring dwellings, considering the existing context. So it's considered to comply with HOU 07E, CS 09F, and Emerging Policy A1. I've mentioned the habitat stuff just a second ago, although we can still secure biodiversity enhancements as part of this scheme. This can be through conditioning swift terrace boxes on high up in the gable, either in the garage or on the dwelling itself, and through a planting or landscaping scheme. So I touched on this briefly earlier. The site lies across both the 2025 and 2055 indicative habitat erosion zones. There's been no response from the coastal manager, although as a replacement dwelling, it should not change the level of risk or affect the coastal processes in this location. There is an increased permeable area, as you can see from the increase of the roof. So it's recommended that the details of surface water drainage are conditioned to ensure that the runoff can be secured at a reasonable rate. And then with that in mind, what I've just said, it is recommended to approve the application subject to the conditions on the screen and at point 5 on the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Any members got any technical questions for the planning officer, please? Councillor Freeman?
Yeah, just if I may, Rob, in your coastal erosion note, 4.26, you talk that the current approach to coastal erosion between Winterton and Scratley is hold the line. I think you'll find that got changed to managed intervention because the rock berm was put in place, because the rock berm continued up from the existing berm, or the gabions I should say, right through to Newport. So that is actually protected by the gabions. But that's only just a small point, but it's just the fact that they did change the terminology on that area. Thank you.
Councillor Tony Wright?
Yeah, just, Rob, you mentioned the shoreline management plan and obviously the opposition to any new development. Is this recommended for approval on the basis that it's a replacement rather than a new development?
Yes, so because it's a replacement dwelling, there's not considered to be an increase in the risk to the cliff. So there shouldn't be any change to the coastal processes there.
Secondly, one of my concerns is that any development, obviously any new construction there is going to create some subsoil intervention, and I'm just wondering whether or not it's so close to the cliff edge. Will this, in your opinion, obviously this is an engineer's question to an engineer probably, is that going to create any disturbance which may well increase the possibility of coastal erosion, because it is very, very close?
I can't comment on the specifics. I'm not a coastal engineer, but this approach is similar to other ones that we've had down the Esplanade and the Promenade recently, which the coastal manager has commented on.
Right, and thirdly, Chairman, if I may, is the services that supply those bungalows, are they at the rear of the properties or are they at the front of the properties?
I don't know on that one, I'm afraid. I should imagine they probably come from the rear, under the road from behind, but I don't know 100%.
Is there any way we could find that out before this is determined, or is there?
Not sure.
Chair, I don't think that that's necessarily material to the determination of the application, because it would have to be resolved as part of the construction and through building regs and agreements with Anglian Water and companies like the utility energy companies. So they will all be factored in, and as a result, and in response to your query about the construction of the foundations, we could always put on a planning condition asking for details of the conditions to be agreed and sort of verified by an engineer. Personally, we don't think that's necessary because of the distance involved to the actual active shoreline, which is, 32 metres away. It would be very unlikely to experience any sort of disturbance to ground levels that could undermine any other properties or the application site itself.
Thank you. Just before we go any further, can you just everybody speak up a little bit, because members of the public are finding it difficult to hear. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I don't wish to be pedantic, but my understanding of a bungalow is a single-storey building, and it states here that this is a two-storey chalet bungalow. That seems to be a contradiction in terms, or does the word chalet change the definition of what a bungalow is? Thank you.
Yeah, so the chalet part just means that it's within the roof space. So the eaves height are actually lower than on the existing bungalow, but it's just that there's living accommodation on the first floor there.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, so I'll call upon the agent, Mr. Graham Norse, to come forward, please. Thank you, Mr. Norse. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and Councillors. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Allison. In the first instance, the applicants welcome the content of the officer report and the recommendation for approval. There are no statutory consultee objections, although it is noted there are some local objections to the proposed scheme. As noted by your officers, the scheme is within the settlement limits for Scrapby, where normally replacement dwellings would be supported in principle. I feel the key issue for consideration, therefore, is the design of the dwelling and impact on the character of the locality. Your officers correctly identify that the existing dwelling forms part of a line of similar style bungalows, but next door but one to the north of the site at number 33 is a large detached chalet, and you've seen a photograph of that, which does to a certain extent set a precedent for similar styles of property in the locality. Again, as noted by officers, the eaves level of the proposed dwelling has been deliberately kept at a low level of just 2.4 metres above ground level. And although the overall roof height is clearly higher than the existing, at 6.9 metres in height, it does retain a similar character to other dwellings in the locality. The proposed dwelling maintains the same frontage position as the existing bungalow and is of a similar width, but extends slightly further to the rear by just over 1.5 metres. The overall living space provided exceeds that of the existing dwelling by just over 30 square metres, providing a total of 112 square metres in floor area. Even with this increase in area, the proposed dwelling could not be described as large, but does meet the minimum size of accommodation for a 3-bed dwelling. A new replacement garage is also provided to the rear of the dwelling, but positioned to the north side of adjoining dwellings, and is therefore not considered to affect any outlook or create loss of light. The proposed design is not considered to adversely affect neighbouring dwellings in terms of loss of outlook or light. Although the roof is higher than existing, it would have a minimal impact in terms of loss of light to number 31 to the north, as noted in your officer's report. The proposed scheme is not considered to adversely affect existing views currently enjoyed by neighbouring residents. The proposed footprint of the building occupies in the main that of the existing building. From the perspective of the applicant, they purchased the property with the initial thought of renovating the property, but have found that due to the state of the existing structure, it is a far more practical solution to rebuild the property with a new design and layout. The applicants have taken great care in ensuring the design does reflect the character of the locality and respects the location of existing dwellings. This is reflected in the proposed position of windows at first floor level, which are designed to avoid direct overlooking of neighbouring property. The dwelling will be constructed with grey tiles and horizontal boarding, which again reflects similar design features in the locality. Reference is made within your report to coastal erosion, but as officers note, and has just been noted again, the proposed front position of the dwelling remains on the same line as existing, and therefore the level of risk presented by coastal erosion is not increased. In summary, Chairman, the proposed dwelling provides for a well-designed dwelling which reflects the existing character of other dwellings in the locality, both in terms of scale and design features, and would result in a much improved development to that of the existing bungalow. The dwelling sits within a relatively large garden, and the layout could not be described as cramped or overdevelopment. The proposed design is considered to complement the character of the locality. I therefore request that the committee support the application, which meets adopted and emerging planning policy and is recommended for approval by your officers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr Norse. Any councillors got any questions? No? Okay,
Thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, just very quickly, if I can repeat the question, perhaps Mr North may well know the answer to this one, obviously, being involved in this. Are you aware of where the services are in terms of the construction of this new building? Are they at the rear or the front?
I think they're at the rear. The existing services are to the rear, and I think that's marked on the existing plans for the
They're
site.
to the rear, definitely to the rear.
It would connect into those existing services.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else? No? Okay, thanks, Mr Norse. Thanks for your time. Thank you. I'm not aware of any parish council or ward councillors wishing to speak, so we now move to the debate and the decision. That's over to the councillors and what they feel. Councillor Hammond.
Move to approve.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak on the application at all? No? Okay, then we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Against? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. Okay then, so we move to item number 5, which is Pops Meadow Galston, and that is Gordon Sutherland to present pages 35 to 61 of your agenda. Over to you, Gordon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just do a little preamble before I go through some slides. This is a retrospective application for planning permission to regularise development that has already taken place. It should be noted that in selling the site to the applicant, the purchase from the council did not override the need to obtain planning permission for any development that requires planning permission. The development that has been carried out is deemed to be significantly different from the historic use of the site and the erection of an 8-foot-high boundary fence, porter cabin and stationing of other additional structures need planning permission in their own right. Since the weekend and since the report has been written, 60 letters in favour of the development have been received, some of which support the need for the security fence and some of which consider that the development is preferable to developing land for housing, which had been considered as a possible use of land by the council in the past. With regard to the objections to the application, the applicant has provided a point-by-point rebuttal, but it's not considered productive to comment upon this. The committee report sets out the planning considerations and officers' assessment of those matters. So I'll now run through some slides just to give you the context. So here's Pops Meadow down at Galston. You've got the site in the centre, a large open space to the front. Pavilion Road runs along north-south, and Fisk's opening at the north of the site, and then you've got Beach Road running to the west of the site. There's a line of dwellings which is not shown on this particular layout at Marine Terrace, which look north onto the southwest corner of the site. So this is an old aerial photo which shows the site and the former Crazy Golf layout. To the north of the space, you'll see there was formerly a kind of mobile home parking area. In the northeastern corner, you'll see the roof of the cafe and the surrounds. So this photograph shows Marine Terrace at the southern boundary and the houses fronting Pavilion Road. To the west, the LBs notate listed buildings off of Cliff Hill, and just the site lies within a designated conservation area which was designated in 2009. This slide shows within the area of Pops Meadow, the yellow colour is where the children's play park rides are located, and then you've got cafe and seating as annotated on that plan. Then the yellow annotation here is for a small token building, a little wooden token and payment building. This one shows a structure for the sale of ice cream and coffee and general refreshments. This one shows the location of the porta cabin that's been erected by the side of the cafe. And this one gives a general layout of the rides on the site, the numbers corresponding to the rides, which I won't read through. And then this slide shows in blue the location of an 8-foot security fence that has been erected to enclose and give security to the site. And the gates at the front, the kind of M shapes there, are showing the gates. So this slide here is of, the bottom slide shows Fisk's opening, and the top slide shows the elevation along Pavilion Road. So here you have the 8-foot security fence. It's a galvanized steel fence with splayed tops. Behind it you can see the cafe and just about the porta cabin to the rear. Then this is the opposite end of Fisk's opening, looking down Beach Road, again showing the fence and some of the rides and structures within and the parking along the street. To the rear of the slide you can see Marine Terrace. This is within the site, so looking at some of the rides and structures within the site. And so that's the token booth and one of the rides. And then in the rear again is Marine Terrace. Again, a shot within the site showing some of the rides and some of the area that's been created for what was formerly parking area and has again been incorporated for the children's facilities. Again, another shot, and Marine Terrace in the rear and Cliff Hill towards the right of the shot. This is looking more towards the front of the site, Pavilion Road. So again, you can see the security fence and the 3-story, 4-story structure overlooking the river. Here's a shot of the existing cafe and seating area. This is a boundary fence that's just within the site that's masking the porta cabin to the side of the cafe, and you'll see the fencing again. Again, this is just a shot down Fisk opening. We'll come back to this. The Highways Authority looking for an improved visibility display on the corner of Pavilion Road, which would mean the realignment of part of the fence in this location. Just a shot to give you an idea of the security fence off of Fisk opening. Again, looking down Fisk opening to Cliff Hill. When we come to the part of the report with the objections, comments, these slides will be relevant and I can come back to them if you wish. So this is one of the objectors with regards to the fence in proximity to their property. So this is showing the 8-foot security fence in relation to the property fronting Pavilion Road. And here's a close-up. And then at the frontage, so here's the gates and the security fence in relation to that property. Then this is from within the site, looking at that property, so you can just see the fence as it adjoins the property's parking space. And then this is again within the site, showing the proximity of the close-board fence that's been erected parallel to the frontage of the houses on Marine Terrace and the proximity of rides to that. Again, the rides that are proximate to Marine Terrace. Then that's a closer shot of the fence that's been erected parallel to Marine Terrace. That's the front elevation of those properties where they have their front doors. And the rides in relation to, again, another shot, rides, fence, Marine Terrace. And again. And then this is looking from Beach Road towards Marine Terrace. So beyond that blue BMW is the front yard, if you like, of the properties on Marine Terrace. So that's showing a front door to one of those properties, an existing fence, and then beyond that, the new close board fence that's been erected. So you get the juxtaposition there of the existing boundary fence to Marine Terrace, then there's a small gap, and then the close board fence, and then the play area behind. And then that's an aspect looking from the front door of one of those properties. And again, standing outside that property. And the fence from Beach Road. This fence, this detail here has been provided by the applicant. When I come to the part of the report where we talk about the style of fencing, we've been talking about potentially replacing it with a fence that would be more in keeping with the conservation area. So this is a more regular bar type fence without the the splayed tops. This has been put to the conservation officer, who is says that this would be acceptable, but recommends that it should be painted, have a painted finish. Right, I've got a whole section of images of the rides. I'll just quickly go through these. So these, you've seen some of those probably from the shots within the site, but these are the rides within, and we can come back to these if that's helpful. So it's just giving you a flavour of the rides. Okay, so turning to the report itself, I'll go back a bit, or quite a bit. So we got something long way back. Just get you a general picture, maybe. We'll just go with that. Okay. So, the application is for the stationing of various rides and structures and for the erection of a boundary fence associated with the use as a children's park. Pops Meadow has been open space and in use for recreation possibly since the early 20th century, and until 2021 it was in the ownership of the Borough Council and leased as a children's play park with cafe restaurant. In 1972, planning permission was granted for an 18-hole Arnold Palmer putting course with ticket office and floodlights. Permission was also granted in 1993 for the use of the site as a children's fun park for a temporary period, and renewed on a regular basis until 2014, when a permanent permission was granted subject to conditions limiting the hours of use between 9 and 9 daily, and the rides and structures specified therein unless otherwise given approval by the authority. So specific rides were approved. In 2006, permission was granted for a brick-built cafe restaurant, which had replaced various wooden buildings on the site. In 2002, permission was granted for the erection of a 1.8 metre high galvanised wrought iron railing along the perimeter boundary. Remnants of that fence are still there, and I can show you a shot of that fence if you wish. So prior permissions continuously limited the rides and structures allowed to be stationed on the meadow to those specified back in 93, which are listed in paragraph 1.4 of the report. And until January 2021, Pops Meadow was owned by the council. And as landlord, the council had the ability to control aspects of the use in relation to its terms and conditions within the lease. The meadow was not in use for several years prior to its sale. The applicant is looking to re-establish recreational use of the site for children, and the security of the rides and structures installed on the site is a major consideration for the applicant. So the proposal is for the installation of the 8-foot high security perimeter fence, a 32-foot porta cabin, which is for an office/medical room, a wooden cabin for cash tokens, a 20 by 8 foot cabin for the sale of refreshments when the park is open, and for the reinstatement of small children's fairground rides to the site, in addition to coin-operated small children's rides. And fencing includes a section of 6 foot wooden fence to enclose the porter cabin and bin storage. The area of land on which the recreation use takes place has been enlarged from that previously to now include a strip of land to the north, adjoining Fisk's opening. I'll see if I can find a slide for that one. So if you're looking at this slide, the fence has been moved out towards Fisk's opening, which was a area of hard stand and has just been enclosed within the park. And that's where some of the coin-operated rides are located. So the boundary fence is also fronting Pavilion Road has been extended towards the road. It was set back further previously. So the green sward at the front there, the prior fence was set further back into the site. The park, the submitted plans include the photographs of the rides and location plan of that which I've shown you. The park generally will be at its most busy during school holidays and in the spring, summer and autumn. So the location of the porter cabin, cash box, refreshment cabin and outside seating area for the cafe are all shown on the submitted plans. Turning to consultations for statutory consultees and consultation responses, paragraph 5.1 of the report sets out that there have been a dozen objections. I refer back to the fact we've had 60 letters of support this week. But the letters of objection, the issues raised include the type of fencing, which is regarded as an industrial type of fencing, being out of keeping with the conservation area, in particular its proximity to Marine Terrace and the materials and style, removal of parking along Fisk's opening, enclosure of land, including the verge on Pavilion Road, potential impact on highway visibility, the laying of a hard surface, questions the need for refreshment cabin and given the existing cafe, questions the details of construction, the number of rides, that the business is out of character, not being a pleasure beach, that the rides are not small and different rides that were here previously, so where the character has changed, the proximity to residences in regard to the potential noise from music and generators, height of the fence being oppressive in close proximity to the homes, introduction of powered rides, fun park not the same as a fairground, detrimental to amenity and outlook of the living conditions of occupants to Marine Terrace, objection to powered fairground rides and music, suggesting that a solid fence is erected to Marine Terrace, and the slides will have already shown that a solid fence has been erected in front of Marine Terrace. Objecting to powered rides, impact on parking and availability for residents, potential access issues for emergency service and refuse vehicles, use of powered rides, impact on rental property, values of adjoining residences, reduction in the grassed area for the porter cabin, additional wooden cabin and cabin for refreshments, asking what is the limitation on rides, noise and operation, asking why the development has taken place and why so many buildings. So that's on the negative side. As I say, on the positive side, we've had 60 letters of support. With regards to statutory consultation responses, those are set out in, again, Section 5. The Highways Authority have provided advice to the applicant with regards to the provision of a forward visibility splay on Fisk's opening, which would mean resiting this part of the security fence to provide that splay. A condition is recommended with regards to that. The conservation officer has objected to the style, size and type of fencing that's been erected, and has provided advice as to what might be a suitable design solution, as previously referred to. The environmental health officer has raised no objection. However, as the development has the potential to cause a noise nuisance to neighbouring residential properties, has recommended conditions for inclusion that the hours of operation be restricted from 10 till 7 days a week, that loudspeakers and public address, except for safety announcements, are not used, and that there be no external amplified music permitted. Section 6 of the report sets out all the planning policy, so I'll just move rapidly on, hopefully, to the assessment of the application, give you a change of scene. So in this case, the key issues are the impact, firstly, the impact on the conservation area. Planning policy allows for recreational uses where they can be carried out without significant detriment to the locality, including amenity of adjoining uses, and where located in the conservation area, development would need to conserve the character and appearance of the area. It's considered in this case that the current use proposal is materially different from the previous permission by reason of the different rides, their appearance, their siting, and their operational characteristics. It's also considered that the security fence which has been erected is of a style and height that's not in keeping with the conservation area, and a more traditional park-style fence is required that is also sympathetic to the amenity of outlook of neighbouring properties. Furthermore, it's considered that the porter cabin, which is generally a temporary structure that would not normally be permitted as a permanent structure in a prominent location in a conservation area. Issue 2 is with regards to the impact on neighbouring residential amenity. Environmental health officers have not considered these rides to be significantly or noticeably noisier than rides allowed under the former permission, and as such it's not considered necessary to require a change to the current rides on the basis of noise concerns, but precautions should be built into any permission to safeguard future amenity. It's also considered that in the interests of protecting the amenity of the occupants of Marine Terrace, which abuts the meadow, primarily for noise generation and outlook at the site, that there should be no rides sited within the first 10 metres adjacent those dwellings. Further, that conditions should prevent the use of loudspeakers and PA systems. As aforementioned, the elevations of the houses on Marine Terrace, or Marine Parade, are close proximity to the replacement boundary fence. So at this location, there's a competing consideration. Let's go back to one of those slides. Move forward. Maybe it's a good one. So there's a kind of a competing consideration as to whether a close board fence is the better solution, or a fence that you can see through. So there's kind of pros and cons to those types of fencing. In this case, it's considered that maybe in the interests of the character and appearance of the conservation area and the open space character of the meadow, that perhaps it should be replaced with a traditional park railing fence rather than the solid close board fence. And again, the position of that fence should be shown on an amended layout plan prior to issuing any permission. With regards to highway safety, the Highway Authority have raised no objection, and as aforementioned, they have recommended a condition with regards to the provision of the visibility splay. There is both on-street parking and free public car parking in easy walking distance of the site, which is not materially altered by the proposed development, and which can cater for the displaced motorhome parking. And finally, flood risk. The area of the site previously used for parking of touring motorhomes has been resurfaced with bitumen, for the siting of the coin-operated rides, but this is not considered to be a material increase in the impermeable surface area in relation to flood risk. Further, the porter cabin has been sited on that existing hard surface. So, in conclusion, it's considered that to determine whether the intensified material different use can successfully operate without detriment to the amenity of adjoining residents, the planning authority should grant a temporary permission for the use and the porter cabin for at least 2 years, including the 6 months which have already been passed since the works began. And this would allow all factors such as the effectiveness of the fencing, the noise from rides to be reviewed over a reasonable period of time and over both an extraordinary year and hopefully a more usual year of holiday use. The fence as erected without permission is not appropriate, and any new permission granted to the application shall require that fence be replaced at the end of this tourist season with one of a style compatible with the conservation area. And again, I've shown you some of the details of the proposed replacement fence. And also details with regards to the fence in relation to Marine Terrace and Pavilion Road. A condition of any permission should be that rides and structures approved will be submitted, and those details as submitted for the application, a condition of any permission should be that rides and structures approved will be as submitted with the application. Details of any replacements to those rides would require a further express prior written permission from the local planning authority to assess whether they would be compatible without causing significant disturbance to the amenity of residents. Given that the site is in flood zone, conditions to the permission will require the provision of a means to anchor the porter cabin and structures, and the applicant has subsequently provided those, but it also should be provided with an emergency evacuation plan. So to demonstrate that proposed use and activities can be acceptable in the location and in highway safety terms, the following matters shall need to be revised and confirmed as acceptable before a permission is granted. Details of revised rides, structures, a revised rides and structures layout, details of the replacement fence, a plan showing the necessary visibility display, and a flood warning evacuation plan. In the event that the applicant doesn't provide these details, it's recommended that the matter be brought back before the planning committee. In the event that permission can be granted in order to safeguard the residential amenities of occupiers and the character of the conservation area, a list of conditions has been put forward for approval, those being that the permission for rides expires on the 1st of September 2023, when we will have had 2 seasons, that the permission for the porter cabin and refreshment and cash token box expire on September 2023, that there be no rides or structures on the site other than those specifically included in the schedule to be agreed, that no rides or structures shall be within 10 metres of the boundary of Marine Terrace and confirmed on the rides and structures layout plan, that existing fencing is removed and replaced and is installed by the 1st of December 2021, including the visibility display, the removal of permitted development rights for the erection of any future gates, walls, fences or enclosures, that the rides and customers operate between 10 and 7 days a week. There'll be no loudspeakers and public address system announcements and no external amplified music. These conditions have been discussed with the applicant since the report was drafted, and some of the requested details, as I said, have been provided. The applicant has advised it's problematic to provide a schedule of rides for next season as the rides are yet to be leased. And the applicant requests that permission should not be temporary, but as stated in this report, and due to the uncertainty, it's not considered appropriate to do that at this time without a period of time to assess the impacts of this use. Further, the applicant makes a counter-proposal that instead of the there being no rides or structures within 10 metres of the boundary of Marine Parade, Marine Terrace, that rides in this location would only be of a low-level type. This issue is, in this location, is one of outlook and noise. If the committee is minded to agree to this, a condition could specify that there be no rides or structures above 8 feet in height within 10 metres of the location. So at the end of that very long ramble, the application is recommended for approval subject to agreement of these details.
Thank you, Gordon, for your detailed report. Any technical questions? Councillor Myers first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just leave for clarification with regards to 10.2 and the last part, and excuse me for going through it. It says details of the fence, including the height and sighting in relation to Marine Terrace, have been requested from the applicant to be provided prior to the committee meeting and should be agreed prior to the issue of any permission. Has there been agreement on the type of style and fencing that's going to replace the industrial style that's there now?
Yes, Chair. The fence detail that I showed almost towards the end of the slide presentation was the one that's been put forward and discussed with the Conservation Officer. And as I say, the Conservation Officer is happy to accept it, provided it with the recommendation that it be painted, have a painted finish.
So has the applicant agreed to that?
We haven't discussed painting it yet. Mr. Gray can respond to that when he has his time. He's nodding his head. So yes, that's the fence that has been put forward, and the Conservation Officer says that should be okay, but recommends it should have a painted finish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Flaxman-Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just have some clarification on 5.5 over the comment from the Environmental Health Officer regarding the opening times? Is that just for the winter, and will they be extended in the summer?
Councillor, that's the entire operation regardless of season. So it's 10 till 7.
Summer and the winter?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tony Wright.
Yeah, just for clarification on 10.1, it says in the wording there that temporary permission for the use of the port cabin for at least 2 years, including the 6 months use already taken. Now, is that below that always says that it will finish in September 23, which is, in my opinion, 2.5 years in total. Is it 2 years plus the 6 months use already undertaken?
Well, it's operating without permission at the minute, so this recommendation is that it be given a temporary permission until the beginning of September 2023.
So that's for 2 years from now?
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hammond?
Yes, you did say you had some pictures of the existing fencing you were going to show us.
Oh, yeah.
Could I see them? And secondly, has the environmental health team done any noise measurements already? So we know what noise, I mean, this is new, it's been in the works for a while. Do we know what noise levels, especially as it's been August, our busiest month?
I don't know whether they've taken any base noise levels, so ambient noise levels, but they're very familiar with the site, so I would hope they would have something on record.
Because that would have been helpful if we know, you know, because you could have come, it's possible you could have come to the report saying that noise levels are whatever.
Yeah, unfortunately that wasn't provided by the Environmental Health Officer, but the advice from them is that there isn't any record of noise nuisance currently, and it's been operating for 6 months.
So if there's no noise problems, why do we need to do a temporary? Why can't we just pass it going forward? Because there's been no noise in the busiest period that we've had in years, and there's been no noise complaints. Why can't we just give a full permission instead of having to do a temporary?
Well, that's a matter for the committee.
Yeah. Robert?
I think it's fair, Chair, to say that there have probably, the Council is well aware of people's concerns about the noise that's created, whether that's a formal noise complaint or not. We still have a duty to investigate. It's also fair to say that the Environmental Health team have been quite preoccupied over the summer period, and resources have probably been stretched. In their opinion, they probably have not considered it necessary to take the noise measurements, given that there is an existing use that the applicant is able to operate under. And what we felt was necessary was the use of a temporary permission to see if the rides, which are materially different to the existing use, are going to create a prolonged nuisance over the period of time that's proposed. So a 2-year permission essentially allows us to do that monitoring with the benefit of a bit of security for the applicant as well, given that it's his livelihood as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any Councillor Wright?
Yeah, just very quickly, you mentioned the closed fencing on adjacent to Marine Terrace, and that may well be altered. Has there been any conversation with the residents on Marine Terrace as to what they would prefer? Because I understand one comment came in that there should be a closed board, but now we're talking about having a more open situation there.
In discussion with the applicant, we have asked for a dialogue between the neighbours and the applicant. So perhaps again the applicant might be able to give some information when he gives his 3 minutes. Can I show Councillor Hammond the slide he was after, which was to show the existing fencing? Can I have access to the slides? Okay, actually, right. So let's see if we can go back a bit. Right, it's not the best shot, but you see the brick pier there, and then the close board fence. To the left of the brick pier is the former galvanised wrought iron fence with the finials on it. That's what used to be there. So that was surrounding the fence. I'm not sure if there's any others that... I'll see if I can find another one. It might be looking for a needle in a haystack. I don't think I've got a close-up shot of it, Councillor Hammond, but that was the style. It was a bit thinner. We'll go back, see if we can get it again. Well, you can just see it overlaid. The security fence is kind of towards the back there, and then you've got this thinner bar fence with a finial on top. So it's slightly lower. You can see the splayed tops of the new fence, and then below it you've got kind of like a little bit of banding and finials and a thinner bar fence. That's an existing fence. They're kind of overlaid at the minute. There's one inside the other. Does that give you an idea? Okay.
Thank you. Any other technical questions? No? Okay, I'll call upon Mr. Lewis Gray, please. Thank you, Mr. Gray. You have 3 minutes, right? Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. Due to the time slot, I hope you've all had time to read through the 2 in-depth documents I've done relating to the locals' complaints and the Council's possible proposal terms. I have answered all them points. Regarding the site, I would just like to say my wife and I placed a tender, like many others, for the site, and we're very lucky to be the preferred tender. In the legal documents between ourselves and the Council, it was always noted that the area was to be solely used as a children's amusement park and food outlet facilities. There was also terms included that we wouldn't apply for planning permission between the 25 and a 50-year period, which we were more than willing to agree to and sign the documents on. We have a young family and wanted to introduce a new business to the area where young and old could come and enjoy the green areas, food, drink and children's entertainment. Being a father of young kids, our main priority was to have a site safe for children and friendly for all ages. The comments we've been getting on Facebook, emails, conversations have been great in how they feel that the site is a safe and pleasant area for all ages. Being a local family, We have always wanted to try and help local charities like the RNLA and offer our facilities and no charge for them to try and help with their charity fundraising. The Heart to Heart Foundation is another local charity we like to try and help, and they have turned around and provided us with a defibrillator, which we have placed out the front on the handrails to help locals in emergencies. Going back to the application, I'd just like to point out a few statements within it. I have clearly stated that I'm more than willing to change the structure of the fence to the design as specified by the Conservation Officer, so I'm fully in agreement with changing that. I'm also willing to carry forward what the Highway Officer asked for and spray the front corner from the post to the road. A few other points I'd just like to make to point out would be in regards to the terms and conditions by the Council. The major points for me that I should leave a 10-metre section empty in front of the Marine Terrace houses. This, I feel, should have been stated within the deeds and the terms and conditions when purchasing. I have stated I am fully aware of the tenants there and more than willing to compromise and only place items and rides which are lower than the fence line, so not to obstruct any light or window space or anything like that. The next is about the temporary consent for use of rides till June 2023, which was stated on my document. Again, nothing was documented stating that I needed to apply for rides in the deeds, as it only stated in the land for children's amusement park.
Mr. Gray, you just have 30 seconds, okay?
Okay. I was informed that I needed to include application for the rides while applying for the fencing, but since this I've had advice to state that in my deeds it states the amusement park, which means rides and attractions. Again, I'm more than willing to provide a set of full layout drawings of rides for each year to the council, and but I feel the need for applying every couple of years was not included when I was purchasing the land. Regarding the anchoring of the Port Cabin Office, which was stated, I'm more than willing to comply, and then on completion I would send photographic evidence that we'd carried this out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
If you just hang a sec there, Mr. Gray. Any questions for the applicant? Councillor Wright?
Just really for clarification, what I asked the officers in relation to the fence near Marine Terrace.
Yes, sir.
There has been discussions with residents on there, have you?
Well, I have spoken to, I'll be honest, me and Martin Edwards, who owns the houses, we did have a brief discussion on it, and then we had some troubles with some of the ones in the house. Not myself and Mr. Edwards have not come to any confrontation or anything. We did discuss maybe an alteration in the fencing, but then when we were getting some nuisance from there, we did put some closed board fencing, because it was commented about putting fencing. I did first of all try and put some mature bushes all along that side, so there's something nicer to look at. But then we had comments back again saying, oh, who's going to maintain them and all the rest of it. So I felt with the someone saying about the noise complaint and all the rest of it, I did speak with Mr. Sutherland and said about closed board fence and how that was within the land there. I've come off of the fence, and I thought for all aspects of people saying they were looking in their windows, even though they're several feet higher than us, I thought a 6-foot fence would stop people on our low level looking into their windows, help stop some of the noise, and then not to have the tenants worrying that they'd have to be worrying about trees growing and all the rest of it. So I thought at the time it was more of a, and it also provided a safety net for ourselves, because they were jumping over that side of the wall to get onto site. So I thought at the time that would have been the best scenario, but it's one of them things.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hammond? No? Anybody else? Councillor Williamson?
Yes, you're quite happy to have the fence, the fence which is recommended by the Conservation Officer painted?
Yes, I'm more than understand. That was one of the biggest things, is when we put this in, I was thinking of the security and all the rest of it for the site, and hands up, I was thinking, I mean, it was new and all the rest of it, it applied to everyone's needs and everything I could understand. Since that point, with the Conservation Officer saying about the bars and the rest of it, I've totally agreed to that and come up with the pictures agreeing with what they've put forward to me, that I would have the bar system done where they can clearly see through. I feel that being in the seaside area, we would have to galvanise it, and I do agree to paint it later on, but I think anyone who knows about the steel thing, when it's galvanised, you do just need like a year for it to dull down because of all the acids coming out of it and stuff. Then I'm more than willing to paint it and move forward on that one. It was just a time scale on, like now, now to December, with things being how they are in the way of slowing up for the season. I'm more than willing to go forward and start to produce it, but there is major issues of materials and everything at the minute. But I'm more than willing to say that I will get this done over a certain period of time, where I can say I have the front piece done in a certain time and work the way through. And if there was funds there quicker, we'd move forward on it quicker. But I feel December is a very quick time to try and, at the minute, it's very hard to get anyone to build anything at the minute and to get manufactured. So if I could have just a slight bit more time, but I can guarantee by Easter next year, the front and so, do you know what I mean? I could set times out, but I feel December is a very short period from now to go forward on it if it was passed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you for your time, Mr. Gray. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I now call on Mr. Edwards, the objector, please. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. You have 3 minutes again. Thank you.
Well, I'm speaking basically on behalf of the tenants that I own the properties. They've all got long-standing tenants in there, and their main concerns is the type of the fence and the proximity of the rides. It hasn't been mentioned, but the close board fence has made a significant difference to the amount of light that's coming into the properties. I did have a couple of photographs which show how close it is when you're actually sitting in your front room, and there's another one there, I can't see that, but it's how dark it's made the properties. Originally, there were shrubs. I couldn't actually hear everything that Mr. Gray was saying, but there was shrubs planted, and the tenants actually, I think they liked that. It did look nice because it blocked some of the view both in and out, but they were removed and replaced by the close board fence. I'm pretty sure that the tenants would be much happier with the style of fencing that has been suggested. But also for aesthetically, if the shrubs could be maybe reinstated. Another problem which has been brought to my attention is that there doesn't seem to be any way to access the gap that is between the existing fence in front of the houses and the proposed fence. So the tenants are concerned about rubbish and how that's going to be cleared. And the rides, again, I couldn't hear exactly what you were saying about the proximity of the rides, but as I say, in that photograph, again, that's how close the ride is to one of the tenants' houses. And even if they're replaced with smaller rides or lower rides, there's still, if they're that close, there's going to be a problem with noise right beside them. But I think that's the main problems we've got.
Okay, Mr. Edwards, any questions from members for Mr. Edwards? Councillor Wright.
Just for clarification, Mr. Edwards, then you as obviously the owner of the property, and you believe that the residents would be happy if it wasn't a closed fence, but an open fence, but with shrubs in front of that fence to give a better outlook, and that would obviously eradicate most of the problems. And then looking at the possibility of the rides being a little bit further away from the fence. Yeah. And as far as that's concerned, that would be the main objection. Yeah, that would. But it's a shame that there hasn't been any consultation with them, because they're so close and they're so directly affected. They've had no consultation at all, apart from obviously getting the plan and letter and having a chance to object. So I've spoken to some of them. Originally, when the proposal was for the 8-foot fence to go up, genuinely I had more than half of them say they were going to leave, that they couldn't have that fence right in front of their front room, which obviously is going to affect my rental values and the property prices.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thanks, Mr. Edwards, for your time. Thank you. I'm not aware of any ward councillors wishing to... Councillor Wright?
Yeah, Chair, I want to declare interest. I did go on there and met one of the residents, and we sat and had a coffee. And I just get the feeling that he would try to work with the residents to try to make it as good as it could. I know when that first went up for sale, we were so worried that it was going to be a big apartment block and everything. So when we saw what was happening, I mean, we was all pleased with that. And it's not noisy at all. They're only young children. So I'm sure that he'd be willing to work with the residents and, you know, get a happy outcome out of it for everybody. Yeah. And I mean, most of the time, all this summer, I've had loads of complaints from residents who's been living near a pub, you know, late closing. So, you know, to sit there or walk past there, it's not really noisy at all. You know, you've got no loud music, and you know. So, I hope it does well, and the residents are happy as well.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. We now move to the debate then. Yes, Councillor Gill.
Can I say that as far as I was concerned, that, you know, if they can come to some agreement, it would be really good. But I think we definitely should keep the temporary on till the 2022 or 23. Because that way you'll be able to come back and say to them, well, no, he's put this massive ride on, and it goes 20 feet in the air and it swings round, and so that way we would be able to stop it. I doubt very much that Mr. Gray will do that, but when you get, I live opposite the Pleasure Beach, which is, they can do anything they like inside the Pleasure Beach boundaries. They don't need planning permission. They can move anything anywhere they want. Whereas Mr. Gray has said he will provide us with a list every year of where he's going to put the rides. Providing he keeps up to that, I'll be happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Gill. Anybody else wish to make any comments? Councillor Wright?
Yeah, I mean, it is right. I mean, we have looked at this over a period of time once the council took the decision to sell the land, and we know that there was an effort there to try to get it to community use. But obviously there was a strong feeling that this may well go to development. And I think what the council tried to do through the working group and obviously through the committees is to ensure that it tried to satisfy both the needs of the council but also for the residents within that area. And I think, you know, because this was always seen as an open area, but one that recognised that it was also for young children in terms of the rides and obviously the Arnold Palmer, Putting Green and everything else, I think we've kept that to that feeling. So I think in terms of the development there, I think this is the best that we could get for there. And I think having looked at it and seen the amount of young children and the families using that, I think it is a good facility and is a secure facility as well, because that is vitally important, that it's a secure facility when you've got young children in that area. So I think it is a positive there. I'm pleased to see that both Mr. Gray and Mr. Edwards are talking and discussing this, because it seems to be in the main bone of contention is the marine terrace. So I do take on board that there is discussions going on. So I would like to see, you know, this proposal going ahead on the basis of the 2 years. I think Councillor Gill is right in that respect. But I think there is this view that subject to everything being equal, and what we've seen this year, I don't think that there would be any fear in 2 years' time, subject not to obviously upsetting people with different noise levels and different rides there. So I think as long as the discussions can continue with Mr. Edwards on behalf of the Marine Terrace residents, as well as Mr. Gray, I think then we can come to this amicably, and I certainly support this view. One thing that I would like to add, and I know people probably laugh at this, but I would like to add that a proviso that there are no firework displays on there at the end of the season, because we know this happens elsewhere, and I think, you know, even for one, I know people may well say, well, firework displays are nice and everything else, but I think in a residential area, I would hate to see that used from that area. But I support the proposal here, as long as everything that's been said in terms of the fencing, in terms of the highways requirement, and also the environmental and heritage side of things. I think that we should support this on the basis of what the officer's recommendation is. And then, you know, hopefully in 2 years' time that we can see that, well, before 2 years' time, that we can see that this has actually worked and everybody is happy with what they've got. So I certainly support the recommendations contained, subject to the issues that we've discussed, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I fully support the recommendations of the officer, with special mention, I think, to the actual division between the terrace and having a 10-metre space before we have any other rides. I think that's essential. I've canvassed around that area a number of times in the past. It's very, very tight, and as the gentleman has said concerning the houses, you're very, very close to that particular area. You're within a few yards of Pops Meadow as such, so I think that's essential. Just one word concerning the fence. Obviously needs replacing because we've got an industrial fence around an open space area, which is totally inappropriate. But you can actually buy not just treated fencing, but you can buy fencing already coated with paint and plastic paint. They do them around sports facilities at the moment. I expect they're a bit more expensive, but they are really terrific finish, and they come in a green colour or whatever colour you want, and they're a far better finish than the galvanised fence. I think they look more aesthetic, pleasing in a conservation area. I think we have to remember this is a conservation area, has been so, and we must hold that at the forefront. But I fully support the officer's recommendations. One point I'd like to make, which I think is rather restrictive, is the time limit till 7 o'clock in the evenings in the summer.
Yeah.
I think that's rather restrictive, personally. I think that should be looked at, perhaps in the future, to extend it longer.
Councillor Emma Flaxman-Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Exactly my point, what Bernard was just saying. I can't get my head around why the opening hours are 10 till 7 p.m, when back in 2014, when the plan history was approved for it to be a children's fun park, we granted 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. Also, with the other two conditions in place of the no use of the loudspeakers in the public address systems and no use of the external amplified music, this is obviously going to reduce noise anyway. We've got 3 licensed premises with outside music terrace located close by, so I can't understand why we're limiting it till 7 p.m. I think, if anything, that condition, that time needs to be changed, if possible. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Hammond.
Yes, Chair. I'm fully supporting this. I'm wondering if we could change our conditions slightly to give Mr Gray a bit of time, as he has asked for. Sorry. Could we not ask or give him time to do the fence till Easter of next year, because he says he may have difficulties in doing it, and then give him till, that's to the front of the place with the visibility display, and then give him till the 2-year time limit to do the rest of the fencing, so he's got time to do it and get materials. So within the 2-year temporary, he has that time to do that, and maybe then he could do, as Bernard says, put in powder-coated railings and not have to paint them. Well, plastic coated, yeah. So that could maybe help. I don't know what Mr Gray thinks and what the officers think to that. Is that?
Well, all I'd like to say, I think the timescale what the council has given Mr Gray is very unreasonable, especially in the times that we are in. Sometimes you can't even buy a can of paint at the moment, that's that bad. So I would agree with Councillor Hammond regarding the timescale. If the committee could agree a time limit to be extended for Mr Gray to do those things, I feel would be more appropriate. And with regards to the opening times, I feel that's quite harsh, if I'm honest. A few years ago, we had a derelict piece of land which was an eyesore. It's fantastic that we have now got somebody on that piece of land investing money and creating jobs and a safe area for children and families. And I just feel that we should be supporting this business. And I think, you know, the opening time should go to, say, 9 p.m, like it was previously. It's all subject to how it goes over the next 2 years. And I think we should be supporting these businesses, and that'd be an extra add-on to how good Galston is at the moment. I mean, it's brilliant. Best I've ever seen in my life. And I feel the condition should be till 9 o'clock at night. Obviously, the environmental health will check and see how it goes. And obviously the time scale of improvements. I mean, if we agree what Councillor Hammond say about the time scale, I mean, Christmas is a bit ridiculous in my opinion, if I'm honest, and a bit unreasonable. So whatever the committee would think about that, because I think we should really be supporting him and doing what we can to help them along the way. So whatever the committee think about the time scale. Councillor Camden.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Totally agree with what yourself has said, Chair, and Councillor Hammond, and I'll be very happy to support an extension in that matter. Certainly, as regards to getting the fence painted. In fact, I agree with Councillor Williamson that maybe a plaster-coated fence to go around. Painting galvanised fencing is not a simple task. It takes a long time. You can't just put paint over galvanised. It needs to be washed to remove any salts. It needs an etch primer put on, and then you're looking at the aesthetic coatings to go on top of that. So it's a very long process. So you know, like I say, I'd be very happy to support an extension.
Councillor Myers?
Yeah, just with regards to the opening times till 9 o'clock, what period of activity time? Are we talking summertime, winter time? Because, you know, in winter time, obviously it's going to start getting dark. So then we're talking about floodlighting to open it up till 9 o'clock. Are we going to say, I mean, I don't have any issue with 9 o'clock during the summertime when the nights are young and it's extended for that playing time. But when we've got nights closing in, are we going to then floodlight the area, which then may cause issues for the surrounding area and what type of lighting? Thank you.
Obviously, floodlighting would be another consideration for the planning committee, I would think, if Gordon can just clarify that. But
I'm just thinking, Chair, anyway, that the applicant applied for 8 till 8. So that's halfway between the 7 that's been suggested by the Environmental Health and the 9 that's been suggested by Councillor Flaxman Taylor. And that's actually what the applicant wanted. So I don't know, throw that into the melt. And just another comment would be that if you extend the time for a replacement of the fence, just need to bear in mind that if you're trying to agree a different fence outside Marine Terrace or Marine Parade, you want to perhaps get that shorter term than in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Councillor Flaxman Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I'd like to move the recommendation for approval with the changes in the conditions, please.
Yeah.
And if the gentleman has requested 8 a.m. till 8 p.m, I'm happy to go with that. It was just
yes.
It was just that the last approval in 2014 came up as 9 a.m. till 9 p.m, which is why I gave them times. But I suppose from Adrian's comment regarding the floodlight area in winter, most of the time venues around that area are closed earlier in the winter anyway, so I wouldn't have thought he would have needed to have any floodlit area.
Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I make a couple of comments, please? I think it's a good suggestion that you raised there regarding the 8 o'clock. I would be very reluctant to propose anything longer than 8 o'clock in the evening, because that is essentially what public comments have been made based on. I think Gordon's report actually describes it being 10 in the morning, not 8 in the morning, until 8 p.m. And I was reading through this and thinking we ought to actually put another condition on restricting any external lighting being added without permission from the council, just for the avoidance of doubt, because that can be quite a disruptive thing to see. I do also think that we have to bear in mind that the council, as local planning authority, does have a legal duty to ensure that developments in the conservation area preserve and enhance the character of the conservation area, and I'm just a bit concerned that we'd be allowing a development to go ahead for at least 2 years and with a very inappropriate style of fencing around the site if we were to extend much beyond December. That's my consideration as a planning officer in that.
Okay, Councillor Gill.
Chair, I would be opposed to 8 o'clock in the morning because I live on the seafront and I tell you, I don't get too much rest 7 days of the week. And being woken up at 8 o'clock in the morning with rides or whatever it is, children running around would be, I think would be unfair. But I'd be more than happy to go from 9 till 9 because, you know, some people do have a lie-in on a Sunday. Cheers, thank you.
Councillor Camden.
Just one point of clarification, Chair. When you say no external lighting, is it as you say it, so internal lighting within the boundary is allowed? My only reason why is because I look out the window now and it's 7:30 and it's nearly dark, and I'm wondering from a health and safety perspective what the provision for people to use rides in this low level of light.
So I think we have to bear in mind that the applicant has not put forward any proposals for lighting at the moment, and to try and install lighting is arguable whether some of it needs permission or not. I think that it's useful for the avoidance of doubt that anything that comes in is subject to public consultation, and so I would say even within the site, lighting that is installed that isn't within a structure or within a building should get express planning permission.
Okay, thank you.
Gordon?
Chair, just had a quick look at the application form, and that the use of the children's rides area is applied for between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. So that covers, I think it covers.
Okay then, so if we just go through the amendments to the conditions, are we happy that that would be 10 till 8? Yeah. And the time scale for sorting the fence out, I still feel that is rather tight, so surely, you know, they could give them a couple of more months, you know what I mean? I mean, Easter. So the time scale goes to Easter for that to be done, and then all the other conditions are as in the pack.
And our members wanting the restriction, which Rob just added in, any lighting to be...
Yeah, and anything to do with lighting would have to come back to the council anyway. Yep, we're all happy with that. Anyone else wish to say anything else?
Just very briefly, I think we just touched on the fencing to the marine terrace. I know it's covered within here, but also the fact is, could there be the decision to actually put some hedging or some greenery in front of that fencing?
Yes.
I think that I'm just trying to get some agreement with the residents on Marine Terrace and obviously the operator himself.
Yeah.
You know, I think if they can come to an agreement over that, then, you know, for that small terrace there, then I think that would certainly satisfy.
Yeah, okay. Are we all happy with that? Councillor Williamson, yeah?
I fully agree with what you said, Chairman.
Yeah.
I just think that I'd like the applicant to actually speak to the conservation officer with regards to the fencing, to actually get a high quality type fencing. It is a conservation area. It's an area which we're looking at to actually improve in the future and do up the buildings down there and renovate the buildings, and actually it's one of our projects the council's running with. So we should make sure that any alterations in the conservation area are appropriate and high quality. And I think you can, I keep mentioning the fencing already prepared and coated. It's really high quality fencing, it looks good, it's usually green, so it matches in quite easily.
Yeah. Gordon?
Chair, we could put a condition on that a sample of the fencing be submitted and agreed prior to erection.
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate it could be more expensive, but it lasts longer and it's far better, and it's in the conservation area.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody happy with that?
Chair,
Yeah.
Just want to clarify that what we've said in the report is that permission should not be issued until we've sorted out the fence details of the position of the fence, the size, the height, the design, the colour. So I appreciate Gordon's comments about a condition, but I do think that needs to be resolved before we issue a permission. And I would also suggest that Easter is a little bit woolly and it needs to be sorted out a little bit before the holiday season kicks in.
April 1st.
Can we go for the 1st of March, perhaps? Instead?
Yeah. That's fine. So with regards to the fence, how would that work? Mr. Gray, come up with this?
I would leave it to the committee to decide if you want to reconsider the application if the fence details don't come in a timely fashion. We alluded to something in an earlier committee at Mortby, you might recall. So it's not impossible for us to reconsider it if the details are not appropriate. I would perhaps suggest by the 1st of November, and then that gives us time to get a report to you in the middle of November.
Councillor Gill?
Chair, I wonder if it would be easier for the whole thing.
Microphone.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate to allow the conservation officer to make a decision on the fence and rather than bring it back to the committee? Because he knows what he wants, and Councillor Williamson has already explained, so I think that would be more than suitable that the conservation officer decides on the fencing.
Yes,
I mean, that would be
that's what we're suggesting.
Yeah.
The conservation area officer would be just one of a number of consultees to give us a decision, but the planning officer would make their decision about whether that's acceptable.
Yes.
We'll do that under delegated powers.
Yes.
Yep.
But if we don't get a solution by, I'm suggesting the 1st of November, then we'll have to come back because it would not be an acceptable scheme. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So everybody happy with that? Yep. All those in favour, please show.
Yep.
That's unanimous. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Right, okay then, we move to item number 6, the application Galston Pavilion Road. This is with Chris Green to present, pages 62 to 72 of your agenda. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Have we got the little precursor presentation? We have. Thank you. So just in brief, we have a large number of applications here, but therefore very, very similar works to light the fabulous buildings in the public realm that Yarmouth is blessed with. You'll also notice that there are some freestanding lighting columns which have been separated out to have their own applications, 4 of them, and then works to the buildings, most of the buildings being listed and therefore needing both planning and listed building consent. There are a lot of different terms mentioned in this of a technical nature, so I've done a few slides to try and help. Obviously the lighting is generally using low energy light emitting diode type fixtures, and you'll see that they are controlled or capable of being controlled by digital multiplex, which is a system where 2 wires will send messages to each individual light which has its own numerical identifier. You'll also notice that there's talk of RGB and RGBW. This is because the LEDs, the little chips that they come on, emit light in those different colours within very close space together, which enables pretty good colour mixing to be achieved. And I seem to have managed to put something over the bottom of on this presentation. It seems to have got put in the wrong place, but there are different sorts of lights mentioned. There's the linear light that you see there, which is an example of what looks like a baton with a number of different little lenses attached to it, each of which can resolve the coloured light from it. And I think I think, I put gobo on a separate sheet because we mentioned gobo lights quite a lot. The freestanding columns are generally featuring an ability to project an image onto the building in question. And so the gobo simply means that you can put an object between the light source and the optic in order to like you would in a slide projector. And below that, I've given you an example of the sort of gobo wheel that you get in many theatrical and disco type lights, where you have these little coloured or even cut out features, which in the case of the gobo I've shown there can rotate. That's not the intention here. In fact, I've gone to some lengths in the reports to talk about things being static. I've also the applicant has very kindly submitted some computer-generated images to try and show how light spill will be of a lesser quantum into the night sky than previously. This is largely because these LED fixtures are of a beam spread that is narrower than the current lighting on many of the buildings. And that there is an extract from the Pavilion Theatre presentation that shows on the one side the existing lighting, which is directed towards the sky, and on the other an image that shows the degree of spillage to the sky in the proposal on the east, and on the other, where it says 2, that shows the spillage that's occurring as a result of new lighting that's being put on the south facade of that particular building. There are, so the general considerations throughout all of these schemes is potential for light pollution, distraction to drivers, impact on ecology, namely bats, and we have had some bat surveys carried out where we thought they were appropriate. Yeah, and I've just said, note members, given the subdivision of sites into separate applications for light post work attached to the buildings, they can be separately determined. In other words, if you felt concerned about a lighting post, whereas you didn't feel concerned about the lighting on the building, you could make contrary decisions, although they're all recommended for approval. You have that degree of flexibility in this. So, moving on. Oh, I see, they've been put all together. That's absolutely marvellous. Thank you. That's brilliant. So moving on to the first one, the Galston Theatre. What I'm intending to say is that generally we've had no public objection to any of these proposals come in. We've had support in the case of this particular theatre application from the Theatres Trust, who are a national agency who are concerned about changes to historic theatres. Obviously Historic England wouldn't have commented on this one because it's only a grade 2, and they tend not to talk about grade 2s. With regard to policies in the reports, again, I'll mention the policies in the context of the Pavilion Theatre and then gloss over it a little on the rest of them because the same policies tend to apply. In the old local plan, you had policy BNV 27, which was directed towards people who had been using high-intensity light projectors to project, I think, advertising images as much as anything else onto buildings. This isn't a laser projector, but it is relatively high-output projectors that get used, although actually I shouldn't be talking about it in the context of this site because there is no projector on this one. I'll move on. But it does come up in the other cases. You've got the promotion of tourism, which includes highlighting particular buildings that are associated with leisure and culture, this being one. You have concerns about residential amenity, which will apply in all cases where you are putting lighting into place if the light spillage is higher than it was beforehand. This is a building that is already lit, as indeed you'll see in the photographs, and you have matters of safeguarding heritage. Come on. So moving on, this is the defined site area in the case of the Galston Pavilion Theatre. And here are some pictures of the existing bulkhead lights which face outwards, so not particularly marvellous in terms of their light spread towards neighbours. And you've got the existing canopy there with a few light bulbs facing downwards, and above that there is some lighting onto the upper parts where the open terrace is. This is an image of the proposed lighting scheme, and as you'll see, there is some lighting now on the south facade, which is on the left side of the picture, in the archways, projecting upwards a little bit above the entablature there, also projecting upwards at the first floor level, and some lighting that is more focused on the balcony towards the east facade. And then underneath the entrance porch, you have a considerably larger number of low voltage or low wattage LED type downlighters to welcome people to the building. And here is an image of the lighting types to be used, with the little downlighters there on the G4 and the uplighters on the south facade G3. I'll move on because I'm sure this is going to become very dull. So there we've got G3 linear uplighters at first floor level, and the ribbon type lighters just lighting up what's known as tympanium, the curved sections under the archway. And again, and again, and an illustration of the greater number of downlighters on the canopy. And again, the replacement uplighters, which have a narrower beam angle than the existing floodlights, and therefore are more focused on the facade and less focused on projecting into the sky. So we have an image of how it is as it is and how it will be. And this the Skyplane Illumination image, which shows you roughly the spillage into the night sky, and the contrast of the way that the building is lit up. You'll see that those bulkhead lights obviously don't light the building, but they sort of light away from the building on the existing south facade. So the principal considerations are light pollution, and I think I've hopefully shown that the use of narrower angle beams directs the light towards the building and not towards the night sky or towards the neighbours. Distraction to drivers. On this, the road speeds around there are pretty low, but the thing that really distracts drivers is if you have lighting that moves or changes or alters during the course of the evening. It's entirely intended that these things will keep the same colour, keep the same intensity during a period when they are switched on. They can, of course, be changed, and they could change during the evening as a performance, but that's not the intention. Now, on bats, this particular building did have a bat survey because it was recommended by the county ecologist, and nothing was found to be there. So we think there is no issue. The concern would be that if, for example, you have an eaves with little holes in it which bats are flying in and out of, they would be disturbed by the presence of new lighting that hadn't hitherto been there. They might change their habits, but that's not suspected to be the case here. So actually this slide I did prepare some little while ago, and I think we have a few more conditions being suggested now than we had before. Essentially the first item is the 2 standard timing for implementation and compliance with the approved plan. The second one is this idea of static state where the lights do not alter during the time they're switched on. You'll also see in the report that there's a recommendation that we switch them off every night at midnight. The presumption here is that the GPDO allows use of land over 28-day periods in any one calendar year that doesn't require planning permission. And so whilst it's been indicated to us by the team who are acting as client for this council application, that they will on occasions want to have the lights on for longer, this will not occur on a regular basis, and therefore we think we can apply the dusk till midnight condition without needing to rather labour the point and write a longer condition. We've also included county highways asking for, again, a implementation of the scheme in accordance with the approved drawings as a sort of standard compliance condition. One might say that the second condition on compliance probably covers that point, but since the county have asked for it, we've put that condition on there. Now, with regard to the listed buildings, obviously the listed building consent will need to have a fixings condition, and I've written one which suggests that we shouldn't really be getting overly concerned if the fixings are going to be into mortar. So in other words, it's fix it to the mortar or tell us how you're going to do it otherwise type compliance condition, and similarly making good using similar materials. So that essentially concludes this particular presentation. Madam Chair, I don't know, do you want me to run through all the presentations in one go now, or do you want to take a vote on this particular application in its...
We'll do them individually.
Individually?
Yep.
So I shall conclude that presentation.
Yep, thank you. Any technical questions?
Sorry. Technical question. Once upon a time, Great Yarmouth bought a load of lights on Great Yarmouth seafront, and they lasted about 6 months because they weren't fit for use because of the salt air. Can we make sure that these ones are fit for use?
I think all of them have a rating on them, which I looked at, and I understand from my little experience in lighting, relate to weatherproofing. So they're all waterproof. LEDs typically have a life cycle of 50,000 hours.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Just quickly on that point, I think the ones on the Yarmouth seafront, they were also waterproof, but they weren't weatherproof to the environment. I think, you know, in salt areas different to being waterproof, so I think we need to double check that, because that'd be a costly error if that was a different sort of light. Just my question is in relation to Pavilion Road, where the lights now, I know that the lights aren't emitting outwards, but by virtue of the fact you're going to light up the west side of the pavilion, there's a lot of a few terraced houses along there. Has there been any discussion, or have people been made aware of this on Pavilion Road?
We did consultation in the normal way to adjacent properties, and indeed posted site notices. I haven't had any feedback. I mean, the point is there's bulkhead. It's actually the south elevation I think you're talking about on that road. There's bulkhead lights, four number bulkhead lights currently on the building that
Right.
face directly outwards. They don't light the building at all. They are to go, along with their rather untidy wiring.
But the consultation has been carried out, so the residents have been made aware of this.
It has.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I think it's a great improvement. Taking off the bulkhead lights from that building will make it a far better building, and I fully support it. I would move it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hammond. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. We move to item number 7 now, the Hollywood Cinema, which is a similar thing, but if Chris could just quickly go through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, this one, the Hollywood Cinema isn't a listed building, but it's in a conservation area. And the proposal here is to erect a freestanding column in the centre of the car parking area to the south of the building, to use a gobo projector to illuminate the facade, and also a wash light to put a simple wash of light onto the facade as well. I don't think... Oh, there's the aerial view, so you can see where the car park is and where the lighting is proposed to go. This is the unit. So it's a freestanding column, and you'll see that there's two fixtures on it, one being the gobo projector, I think that's the lower one, and the upper one being the a wash light. And I think, oh, there we go, that's the site notice, and oh, there's the facade. So it's quite an attractive facade. So again, we didn't have a bat survey on this one. It's quite a well-lit environment, so we don't think that that particular facade, given that the lighting is to go onto the lower part of it in the main, would cause an issue with bats. We haven't had any advice to the contrary from the county ecologist. Again, static lighting, so distraction to drivers wouldn't occur. With regard to light pollution, the building itself is illuminated, not the area around it. It is, again, a form of lighting that is relatively focused. I mean, the wash is not a highly focused form of lighting, whereas the gobo projector is, but nevertheless it's on the building facade. So again, I've put the same conditions down, but there's the additional ones in the report relating to highways, asking for a bit of additional certainty as far as they're concerned, and the matter of timing. That concludes that presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Hammond?
If you can go back to the picture of the sighting of the light, I'm concerned with where you've got it directly in line with the entrance exit of the cinema. I'm concerned someone will back into it or drive into it. Well, that's a question. Could it be moved somewhere else? Could it be moved to the side of the entrance at either side and still be...
Now, that's an interesting debate. We did have somebody suggest that it might be positioned to the side. This was in conservation. There was a comment back that they felt that it would be, in some ways, obstructing the view of the facade. Well, obviously, it's a very thin lighting column. When I debated it with the lighting engineer, you get a thing called keystone effect. I don't know if, it's basically where if you put things off at the side, you get a tapered image being projected, and therefore you have to compensate for that. And also you lose, because you're throwing one side slightly different to the other, the image quality diminishes because of the distance. So therefore the lighting throw is the intensity diminishes with distance. So you'd need two columns really to do offsets. So this is why they stuck with the one column idea. Yes, it is in the car parking area.
I've known cars be shunted within that area, living in that area for a long time. It's quite a high volume car park. And I'm just concerned that we spend all this money putting a light up and it gets knocked or damaged, and all of a sudden instead of lighting the building, we're lighting the floor.
Yep. Okay, any other questions? No, there's nobody speaking on this item either. Anyone wish to say anything in a debate? So, okay. Councillor Williams, seconder. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Abstentions? Okay. Okay then, so we move to number 8 and 9. These two are together. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the St George's Theatre application. St George's Theatre is a Grade 1 listed building. Historic England have made a comment on this one that they were concerned about the lamp on the post, because I have put in the presentation the associated post structure as well. They were worried that it was constituting an additional item of street furniture, and of course many of us who are involved in urban design do worry about the proliferation of street furniture. However, the difficulty here is that the building opposite, number 145 King Street is one that we are in the process of compulsorily purchasing in order to do a back-to-back agreement for it to be repaired by the Great Yarmouth Building Preservation Trust. So it might possibly in the future become a potential site for the freestanding pole with the gobo projector that would illuminate the facade of the St George's Theatre. It's an opportunity we could look at. The suggestion here is that we recommend, or the recommendation in the report is for approval, but I think the underlying promise is that if the compulsory purchase was to take place earlier, we would look at the possibility of mounting the thing on that building, subject to it not doing harm to that building. It's a slightly odd situation, but we can't at the moment promise anything with regard to the timing for that CPO. So I'll move on to the actual proposals. What we have at the moment is a building that is lit, at least in terms of the bell tower, by a number of uplighters, and these will be replaced by ones that are more narrowly focused as per the report. And in addition, 9 lights will be placed internally behind the windows to provide a degree of uplight to highlight the arched window openings. And if I move on, come on. That's the current situation, so obviously the building is internally lit already. And this is the proposal. So what you have here is a number of those linear type batten lights uplighting the windows and highlighting the inside of the arch, or the introdos, I think is the correct term. And then on the front you can see the effect of fish being projected onto the lower part of the I suppose it's the west facade. Now, obviously that shows a fish pattern. You could have any pattern you liked on those gobos. I expect the fish pattern is quite an appropriate one, and maybe that's the intended projection. So again, here's the computer-modelled impression of what it will look like with the new illumination, and you'll see that the change to the bell tower isn't that great. It's already illuminated, and this gives us some confidence that it's a fairly bright environment, it's an already lit building, bat presence isn't going to be much impacted by this sort of proposal. And again, we have some Skyplane Illumination calculations which show that the existing does push a lot more light out into the sky, and that the proposed will be far more focused on the building. There has been a little bit of debate about how we get around putting the lighting inside with regard to cable runs. Essentially, the idea is to put them in plastic ducts, surface mounted, to do the minimum amount of damage to the building. They will have some visibility, but you'll see that there's a coloured band there internally, and so you run the duct along the division between the bands to make it less obvious. And similarly here. Now, there was a debate about whether Historic England, suggested that you could just attach the wires directly to the plasterwork. But talking to the lighting engineer, that wasn't such a good idea because the control cable, as well as the power cable, has to be contained within the thing. So it is a neater, tidier solution to actually put it in a plastic duct. And similarly, they've concentrated on trying to show all of the runs, so I don't think we have to worry too much about conditions requiring further details because they have been provided. So as long as they're screwed and plugged into the plasterwork, it does the minimum amount of damage to the building and is essentially fairly reversible. And so moving on, I've included the lighting pole, which is a different application on this. Now, again, I suppose I'll have to ask the Chair, you're going to have to vote twice on this. Chair, do you wish me to stop now and take a vote on the general lighting to the theatre before moving on to the post?
You can move on to the next one. We'll just take
the two together.
Okay. Individually.
So we have again a gobo projector on a lighting column being proposed to be placed more or less where this existing street one-way system column is, and there's the image of the item projecting its light onto the facade of the building. So again, I think I've dealt with light pollution to the sky. It's reduced. Distraction to drivers, as long as it's static, it's not a problem. Bats, given the highly lit environment that we currently have, and the fact that we're lighting the building slightly better, we don't think this is a problem in this instance. What we are suggesting on all these cases is, and I should have said this before, a note regarding ecology, but simply pointing out to people, well, it has been framed as a condition, but it's pointing out to people that they have a duty under criminal law to not disturb protected species. So if they find bats during the process of installation, they need to report them and take advice from the ecologist. So again, similar conditions to those previously, and as in your report. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you. No one speaking on this. Any councillors got any questions? Councillor Hammond?
Yeah. Are we voting for the post to be the post unless you can do it on the building, or are we voting for it to be on the building, or are we voting for it just to be on the post? Because it's
I think in essence that the way the report is written, you're voting for the post. But I suppose what I'm saying to you, almost as an aside, is that if the building comes forward at a fortuitous time, and I suspect it probably won't, because we're talking about getting these things installed pretty quickly so that they can be a grand switch on. But if it was to come forward, I think we would undertake to look at placing the projector on the building.
So we're going to vote for it to be on the post, but if you get the building first, it'll go on the building. Okay.
No, let's just be clear, Chair, if we can just clarify. The application before you is for a post. It's recommended to be acceptable regardless of whether anything comes forward with compulsory purchase on a completely different site over the road. I wouldn't like you to say this is acceptable, but it would be even better if. I'd like you to just know in your minds as the decision maker, is it acceptable if this went forward? If something else came forward, it would need a new planning permission, and you'd look at that, and the property services team would decide whether one is better than the other. Yeah. As Chris alluded to there, I think we want to get. I think the council wants to get on with these, and compulsory purchase probably won't align.
Yes. Yep. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick comment. I've seen many schemes of these types of lightings in London, and very, very late at night. And because the lights are specific to the building, the actual spillover light pollution is really quite low. And it does tend to highlight the building. And even the areas around the building actually are in darkness. So they are a good lighting scheme as opposed to what we have.
Yep. Any... Sorry?
Can I just add something else? Sorry.
Go on, Rob.
I've just noticed that as we've gone through, we're talking about a lot of replacement lights. And unfortunately, what we haven't done is said that we need to get the existing bulkheads and the existing light fittings removed in order to prevent that additional light over and above what's proposed. So for the avoidance of doubt, to make sure that there's not two sets of lights operating and going beyond what you said there, Councillor Myers, we'll put an extra condition on them all for existing fittings to be removed before new ones are added.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Roy, did you want to say?
Just very briefly, the actual post adjacent to 145, which has gone up, that will be replacing the existing column that's there already, because there's I think it's a road direction column on the corner there, and people cross over there, so we don't want too many columns on there. Will that be replacing that one on the corner of Yarmouth Way and King Street?
That's not my understanding now. The county highways chaps don't like the idea of their kit being put on anybody else's pole. So I think we have to retain that one-way sign that is there.
So we're going to have two.
So
we're going to have two posts.
Yes.
Yep. Any other questions? No. Anyone else wish to say anything in debate?
We won't have two posts if it goes on the building.
It's quite possible, of course, that we could offer to host the sign on our post, on the council's post, rather than the county council's highway post.
It does actually say, Chairman, on the preamble here, the new Google projector mounted to a new column that will directly replace an existing signage column opposite St George's. So it won't replace it.
I think that's inaccurate now, in the sense that I get the impression that county highways don't like the idea of sticking their stuff on anybody else's. I don't think they'll agree to it. That's the point. I mean, that was the intention when I wrote the report, but they don't want anybody to mount anything on their stuff, definitely, and they don't like the idea of sharing with someone else if they don't have complete control of the situation. So I think you have to accept that there would be 2 posts now.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or anything? Right, we'll move. Have we got a proposer and a seconder? Yeah, this is for item number 8. So St George's Theatre, King Street first. All those in favour? That's unanimous. And item number 9, 145 King Street and Yarmouth Way. All those in favour? All right. Is that all right? Yep. Okay then, so we move to item number 10, which is the Town Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. So a very similar set of circumstances. Proposal to put a lighting pole in the garden area near the flagpoles, illuminating the facade of the Town Hall at a relatively low level. I don't have many images for this one, so again, that's the projector pole, same sort of thing, single gobo projector, and a wash light underneath it, illuminating the lower part near the entrance door. It is a fairly bright environment at the moment with street lighting, so again, although I don't have an actual image of a computer-generated image of what it will look like to show you, I think one can be reasonably certain that it will not be causing light pollution to the night sky, or indeed illuminating a bit of the building where there might be bats present higher up. And there's a couple of pictures of the... See, yeah. So, Town Hall is a Grade 2 listed building, and we have the similar concerns expressed. And I have managed to put in there that, as I say, the report will suggest conditions, but which are in excess of what I've written there. The usual thing: turn off and concern for the highway interest, and about, on the listed building side of things, concerns about. Well, actually, sorry, I shouldn't have put condition regarding fixing that. That should have come out. That really is relevant to other things. There is no fixing to the listed building, so we don't need to worry about that. Sorry. I've done, there's so many of these. I've got a little confused there, I think. Okay, thank you, Chair. That concludes the presentation on that one.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Hammond.
Sorry, Chris. How high are the flagpoles we've got there? And they won't interfere with the light, will they? That's the only thing I'm thinking. We ain't going to have a flag whipping round and hitting the lights and wiping them out all.
Do you know, I think you have got a point there. That the flagpoles are. Can we have that slide back up again where the sighting is? The light will be pretty close to where the flagpoles are. I mean, the flagpoles strike me as being taller than the lighting column, but I must confess I can't give you an honest answer to that because I don't know how tall the flagpoles are. I haven't measured them.
You've got the flag as
well.
well.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that the flag could whip around and hit the lighting column.
Yeah,
that I think is something we need to further agree. Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to approve it with a movement somewhere else for safety.
Yeah. Councillor Gill.
My question was basically the same. In view of the fact that we've got these nice new massive flags, when you have the flag at half-mast, it may well cause a problem with these lights. So could we have a look into it?
Yeah.
Because they're lovely new flags.
Right, any other questions? Anyone else to say anything in debate? No, we'll go to the vote. Have you got a proposer and a seconder? Yes. Yeah. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, the next two, 11 and 12, are both together. Toll House Street. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. The Toll House is a Grade 1 listed building, former house, merchant's house that was for fortified merchant's house. In other words, steps up to the upper floor, giving a degree of protection. This is one where I did really fear that there might be a bat interest. We'd had the county ecologist ask for a bat survey on the Galston Pavilion Theatre, and I looked at the others and I thought, well, this one hasn't been previously lit and will be lit, and it is of such an age that one might expect there to be a presence. Anyway, they did do a survey very, very recently, and they found nothing present, so I think we can discount that and just apply the condition that was previously recommended on unexpected discovery. Anyway, just to move on, there is the site plan. There's the existing street column and the porch bulkhead light that's currently on the building. And these are the proposed lights. So instead of the porch bulkhead light, you have a new light shining down into that upper porch area, and you have some uplighters playing up the facade and highlighting the coat of arms on the frontage there, and another one attached behind the wall to the front to just cast a light over the lower part of that facade to the southern end. And then the proposed wiring runs, obviously they're quite reasonably well concealed, because you've got that flat area that you can just run things along the top of without even needing to fix them. The route of the light to the inside the porch, however, does cause a little bit more concern in terms of further agreement of fixings, and we put a condition on for that. Although they have provided quite a lot of information to us in that regard, it's just that we know where the runs are going, we just don't quite know how they're being fixed, so we would like a little bit more on that from the applicant before they're put in place. And we have some computer-generated images of the new lighting. Obviously, as I say, the existing building isn't particularly well lit. It just has a light in the porch, so there isn't an image of how it looks currently. This is all new lighting. And there's an image of the overall lighting effect in terms of luminosity, including that from the freestanding column that's proposed just towards the edge of the garden area of the library, which we'll come on to in a minute. So here is the application for the freestanding column, which I will present to you now. And you'll see that it is located a few metres north of the building, in the at the back edge of the footway, on the edge of the garden to the library building. And here we have a image of the device and the luminaires, and its spillage onto the flank wall of the building. And there it is again. So consideration generally, as before. I think we've dealt with it before, and I'd say we did have a bat survey specifically done on this one latterly, simply because it was the only one that really, beyond the Galston Theatre, struck me as being a real problem with bats. Well, there aren't any present apparently, so we can just rely upon the informative note stroke condition. And again, I refer you to the report rather than to my slide here with the conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, then any questions? No questions, so we'll do two votes again. Item 11 first, please. Have we got a proposer and a seconder? Yeah, all those in favour? That's unanimous. And item number 12? All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Item number 13, please. The Minster Church of St Nicholas Church Play.
Thank you, Chair. So the Minster Church doesn't have any freestanding columns involved in this particular one. It's just exterior lighting and lighting to the bell tower. So there's the outline of the building, and here's an image of where the lighting is to go. You'll notice that the generality of the luminaires are replacing those that already exist in little weatherproof shelters, weatherproof and vandal-proof, I have to say. They're fairly robust things around the site. The only change really is that in the one towards the bottom edge of this slide, you'll see it says M1, M2. That's because you've got a wash-type luminaire going in there, but you've also got a gobo projector to go into that enclosure. And then on the rest of it, you currently have 4 lights around the tower, uplighting them, and the replacements are of narrower angle, performing the same task. But there's one additional light, M4, on there, set in the parapet gutter behind the parapet, which lights up the clock tower, or the clock, should I say, the clock face. So here are the enclosures that exist already. Actually, surprisingly, some of the enclosures do already feature LED-type fixtures. There's been some replacement has taken place, but they're obviously not quite as sophisticated as the ones that are now being suggested. And I don't think they have the ability to be controlled by DMX. And so the proposal is to, well, sorry, I'll carry on because this is all proposal. Here we go. And there's the tower lights. And again, the additional lighting up the clock face on the tower. And again, an image of Skyplane Illumination. You'll see the intense blue colours in the existing and the more limited colours. In fact, the reason for the little wedges is that's where the pinnacles are, you see. So it's illuminating the pinnacle, but there's a little overspill beyond. Interestingly enough, the church is only Grade 2 star listed. You'd have thought that a medieval church would be Grade 1, especially of its size and character, but of course it was bombed out so severely during the war and rebuilt that it's actually really quite a modern building in many regards. And it's already pretty well lit, so the suspicion of there being bats present is obviously very low. So again, light pollution is reduced by the more focused nature of the thing. Distraction to drivers, very unlikely. This building is actually set quite a long way away from any significant highway. So again, I refer you to the report rather than my slide with regard to the conditions that are being asked for, because we have added 1 or 2 since I prepared the slide. But it's essentially following the same route as before, with county highways asking for an extra condition, us saying let's turn stuff off at midnight, and fixing details for the listed building. It has to be said actually that there's not that much fixing required, because the lamp that stands on the parapet, for example, will just sit there on the parapet with the wires snaking to it. It doesn't need any fixing. And of course the ones that are already in the enclosures, there's no need for detail on that. So hopefully that should be fairly straightforward in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for the planning officer? No. Have we a proposer for the recommendation? And a seconder? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 14. Sorry? you just put your microphone on, please?
This has been a very interesting discussion on the borough's Sunny Lumiere project, and it's going to look very good. Have we included in all this work a project to illuminate our new bridge that will be shortly operational?
No idea about that.
It's not a current proposal.
No, that's not on here, so perhaps in the future. Item number 14 are delegate decisions made between the 1st and 31st of August, which are on pages 142 to 151. There is no other business that I'm aware of, so I draw the meeting to a close. And by the way, the bridge is shut here, so I think you've got to go all the way round. Thank you very much.